Welcome on in, NFL Nightcap Recap, Week 4 edition in a wild and crazy weekend, a wild and crazy Sunday across the NFL that began across the pond with the Pittsburgh Steelers finding their identity, and it ended in Arlington, Texas, with the Dallas Cowboys, unfortunately for them, falling a bit into their identity in the most thrilling 40-40 tie that you're ever going to see in NFL history. So as we begin, sip 'em if you got 'em. So, yeah, we mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers starting off the morning in Dublin, Ireland against Carson Wentz and the Minnesota Vikings. You just look at that game with DK Metcalf taking it over, becoming the player that the Pittsburgh Steelers thought that they were getting when they acquired him in a trade with the Seattle Seahawks earlier this offseason. Huge win for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They get it done with defense, they get it done with DK Metcalf, and with all of the space that's created around Metcalf by his big playability deep downfield and the attention the defensive coordinators and the secondary from Minnesota had to pay him. Kenneth Gainwell goes off in one of the strongest performances of his time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you look at the Steelers forging an identity, then you look at the Chicago Bears. They seem to be stepping into a winning culture around head coach Ben Johnson. In Tampa Bay, the Eagles go down and they completely neutralize the Buccaneers' pressure between Dallas Goddard and the shovel pass touchdown off of a shotgun look deep in the red zone to a Saquon Barkley handoff out of the tush push formation. Nick Sirianni continues to innovate. I talked to an NFL coach about that variance off of the tush push, and he told me, quote, the Buccaneers edge defenders should have stayed home. It shouldn't have worked. Well, it did, and this was only the second time the Eagles have run that play out of the tush push look. It's the first time that it worked. It was a touchdown. It was a pivotal moment in that game, and it sure seems harder to ban that play if you're the NFL, if the Eagles are going to run that kind of variance off of it and a different look rather than the traditional tush push out of that formation. And you look at that game, that Eagles Buccaneers game, and in a place that had been a house of horrors for Philadelphia over the years. Baker Mayfield brought the Buccaneers to the doorstep of another comeback win, and that is until Jahad Campbell, the first round pick out of Alabama, pulls off the interception in the end zone, essentially ending the game and essentially once again showing off the Eagles' depth, their balance, and their youth across the roster in key positions. The Eagles are dangerous. It's not pretty. Saquon Barkley does not seem like he is the same player that he was a year ago. The explosiveness does not seem to be at the same level it was a year ago. The offensive line is struggling to open up running lanes. Jalen Hurts, wildly inconsistent, but big time plays in the big time moments when the Eagles need him most. But they're 4-0. The Eagles just continue to find a way. They stay unbeaten. But let's talk about the Bears for a second here. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears and a second straight win for Ben Johnson's team. Caleb Williams did everything he could to lose that game today in Las Vegas. Just 212 yards and a touchdown. One really bad, really ugly interception. Just not a lot going right for Caleb Williams a week after everything went right against the Dallas Cowboys. But the Bears block a Raiders last-second game-winning field goal try at the buzzer, and it just seems like even though that there may be a talent gap, looking up at a team like the Packers, certainly looking up at the Detroit Lions and how they have played over the past 3 weeks with a couple of really impressive legacy defining, identity reinforcing wins where they're running the ball and playing really dominant defense. Even though there's a talent gap between the Packers and certainly the Lions, the Bears are figuring out ways to win. And a win like today, when you go into Las Vegas, you pull it off on the final second. That's not just a win that you tuck away in the standings for safekeeping at a potential wild card race. That's a game, that's a win that you look back on and you say, that was the catalyst. That was the spark. That's where we found a way to overcome adversity, overcome poor play by our quarterback, and do enough defensively and on special teams to win that game. And maybe it becomes the type of win that launches a run to the postseason and a potential playoff berths. And speaking of playoff berths and validation wins, What a validating performance by the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday afternoon in San Francisco. Running back Travis Etienne runs all over the Niners defense without Nick Bosa, 124 yards and a touchdown. Defensively, Devin Lloyd just had a terrific game, intercepting Brock Purdy twice. And I think what's most impressive about Jacksonville's win is they pulled it off without Trevor Lawrence being the catalyst, without Trevor Lawrence really being much of a factor. And in a division where the Texans are hot and cold, big win for Houston today. They got it done. They made a statement. They took out a lot of frustrations today. It really seemed like the Colts came crashing down to earth in that division. They go out to Los Angeles, and Daniel Jones kind of comes back to earth a little bit from the MVP caliber level that he had been playing at over the last several weeks in a game where Matthew Stafford and the Rams just completely went off. You know, you look at the Rams taking care of business against the high-flying Colts. They knock off Indianapolis. The Jaguars just keep chugging away. The Jacksonville Jaguars are very quietly 4-1. Now, their biggest test is going to come in Kansas City on Monday night. And after a game where we saw speed all over the place, with Xavier Worthy with a big game, Tyquan Thornton with another touchdown on an explosive play from Patrick Mahomes, that's setting up to be a heck of a game. It's setting up to be a heck of a barometer for where the Jaguars are. Whether or not what the Chiefs did on Sunday afternoon against a really banged up Ravens team is sustainable. We're going to find out a lot about two playoff caliber teams in the AFC on Monday night in prime time. And, you know, speaking of prime time, that game couldn't have gotten any better. I know it ended in a tie. I know that, you know, the outcome is what it is, but that game in Dallas had a little bit of everything. It had the Cowboys basically neutralizing Micah Parsons for 58 minutes, 60 minutes, and then in overtime, he makes the game-saving tackle from behind, sacking Dak Prescott, keeping him out of the end zone, keeping hope alive. Jordan Love drives them down the field. They eventually, you know, kick the field goal. Just a wild, wild finish in Dallas. And inside Monday morning's column, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into what two executives told me about the trade from the Cowboys' perspective and how it structurally hurt Dallas's defense and set the stage for the Cowboys to be a historically bad passing defense through the first 3 weeks. And from the Packers' standpoint, where even if Parsons isn't the force multiplier, even when he isn't the driving force, even when he isn't the catalyst on defense, why the Packers are now a more complete football team with Micah Parsons than when they were without him. We'll get into that in the column. We're going to talk about the Eagles inside the column, going down to Tampa Bay and Nick Sirianni's bag of tricks, as we discussed. We're going to get into DK Metcalf taking over that game, Drake May chasing history, a historic performance in New England from the second-year quarterback Drake May. Just a wild day all across the NFL. It's late. We're putting on the finishing touches of the column, and hope you'll check it out in the morning. Hope you'll subscribe to Between the Hashmarks. Appreciate you staying up late, and we'll chat with you Tuesday on the Between the Hashmarks podcast with myself and Mike Tanier right here at Between the Hashmarks. Matt Lombardo signing off after a wild and crazy and long Week 4 NFL Sunday.